would be with us in your word, that help the word that is spoken, Lord, be from you. I pray that you would get me out of the way, and Lord, let our hearts receive what you would have us to hear this day. Amen. So we've been walking through this idea and this sermon series, talking about the way that our faith actually informs the way that we work. It informs the things that we do, even if we're retired or we don't have a day job, that our faith is, you cannot separate those things. Our faith is intricately woven with what we do on every day, right? What we're doing. And so today I really want to show you the heart of this idea. I want to show you the heart of how this faith impacts our work and how it should, and sometimes how it actually can damage our work, or how it can improve our work, or how we can understand our work through this lens of faith. And to do this, I want to read for you again Ephesians chapter 2. Could you put that on the screen, Ron? Ephesians chapter 2. We said this once before. Would you read it with me again once it's there? Good. For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are His workmanship, created
in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand, that we should walk in them.
Okay. Can you go back to the first part of that verse, and we'll just leave that up there. Central to what it means to be a Christian is this set of words, right? By grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not what you all did, as they would say in Houston, right? This is not what you've been doing or what you've been up to. It is a gift of God. It's a gift of God so that no one can boast. Now, we say this, and I think it's pretty familiar to most of us, this phrase. If you've been in Lutheran circles, certainly, right? You've heard this before. But we need to hear this again and again and again in our lives. We need to hear this again and again and again in our lives to remember that that is the way it works. And it's not by what we do, but what Jesus has done for us, that we are saved. That we are saved. Because we have this tendency again and again to point to what we are doing in order to understand that we have favor with God. We point to what we're doing in order to understand and know that we have favor with God. And so you have had these conversations likely in your world recently, right? If you ever talk to someone who's not, they're a Christian but they don't come to church. Does anyone know anyone like that? Me too. Okay, but they don't see the need to be connected to this saving word from God, right? And they say stuff like this, well, I think I'm okay. Okay? Or, I'm doing pretty good. Has anyone heard this before? I have, right? And so what this is a picture of is, what are they pointing to as testimony to their salvation? They're pointing to this reality that, well, I'm kind of not doing too bad. Right? I think God gives me some credit. Right? So they point to what they're doing to prove that they got it, that they're okay. Right? When nothing could be further from the truth. Right? Actually, the book of Romans says that no one's works is going to justify anybody, right? That before God, all of our works, what we do, if we're trying to get them in front of God to say, look how cool and good I am, they're filthy rags, right? So it's kind of like if you have a bunch of dirty socks, and you say, look, God, this is what makes me say you should like me more, right? Is dirty socks. Now, and we know this wouldn't work between us. Dirty socks aren't going to impress anybody. And God says your works are kind of like that. When you try to bring them before a holy God, a holy and righteous God who knows nothing but perfection, right? And sees the depths of our hearts, and we're going to say, look, I have these dirty socks. Are you going to think of me as righteous? And God says, that's not the way it works, ever. Nobody is justified by what they do. Okay? Nobody. Zero flesh will be justified by the works of hands. Nobody. Instead, it's grace. It's a gift. Something you can't pay for or get. You don't have enough money, right? It's a gift. Grace is a gift. It comes out of nowhere. You didn't see it coming. Sometimes it surprises you. It's a gift. God has redeemed you through Christ Jesus alone, and all of His righteousness is given to you. It's a gift so that no one can brag and no one can boast. You see, thinking you're justified by what you do is kind of like watching a dog chase their own tail. All right? They chase their tail, right? And they run harder and harder and harder trying to get that thing. And every once in a while, have you ever seen a dog that gets their own tail? Right? And they're super happy about this, right? But then what do they have? They're just chewing on their tail, right? Like they don't actually have anything. Right? And so many of us get caught up in this. We get caught up in this thinking like God's going to favor me more by what I'm doing. Right? Or He's going to be impressed with what I do. And God says that's not how it works at all. And you have to stop thinking that way. Because what you do, you actually damage the people around you when you think this way. And so the first thing I want to submit to you is this. Unless you have the right understanding of your salvation, that it comes only through the work of Jesus Christ given to you for free out of nowhere, like a Christmas gift under the tree, unless you understand your salvation as something that you could not deserve ever, but it's just been graciously dropped in your lap for you to open, you will never be able to work correctly. Okay? Unless you understand that grace and salvation come from God as a gift, you will never be able to work in a way that pleases God, right? In a way that is actually beneficial for the people around you. Okay, so let me tell you what I mean. First of all, I want to share with you a quote from a man named Wingert, right? But he says this: God does not need your good works, but your neighbor does. Okay? God does not need your good works, but your neighbor really does. Okay? Our works are not for God. Our works are not to pay off God. Our works are simply for the neighbors that we have been placed nearby. Okay, this is a big deal. Because this is what tends to happen. What tends to happen is if we feel like we need to justify ourselves before God, right, and we have this gnawing anxiety and guilt that we haven't done enough, right, what we end up doing is we go out and we look for people to serve. Okay, we'll do this. We look for people to serve, not for their own sake, but so that God will like you more. Okay? We will go out and we will look for people to serve so that God is pleased with you. And what we do when we do this is we make people pawns in our chess game with God. Okay? We make other people pawns that we are serving to get to the heart of God. And you know what? People know. People know if you're selling something or if you're using them to get to something else. Okay, everybody knows this if you've ever tried to buy a car from a used car salesman, right? They're trying to change this because they know it doesn't work, but you know they're being nice to you, they're getting you that coffee, right? They're telling you jokes and asking about your family because they want something from you, right? They have a motive. And when we think that we are serving God by going out and serving people, in which we're gaining favor with God by going out and doing this, people know. Right? People know. The people around you know. If you're going and serving them thinking that it's just a way to climb the ladder to get to God. right? They just become a pawn in your game. And you're not actually loving them. You're not loving them for who they are. Hey, Finn. Okay. So we'll review. Thanks, Finn. We'll review. God has gifted you salvation, right? You can't earn it at all. Nothing you can do can take it away, right? You receive it by faith, holding on for dear life to the grace that Jesus gives to you, hearing His words, clinging to them, taking His sacraments, right? His body and His blood, believing in what He has done. You hold on to that. And in this you have ultimate security, right? You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You don't have to show how good you are. You just hold on to that. And when you're doing this, the people around you just become people that you get to serve for their sake. The people around you, they're just people that you get to serve for their sake, right? Not for your sake to make you feel better, but for their sake, right? And so you get to just notice, maybe for the first time, the actual people around you and the actual needs of the people that God has placed you nearby. And you get to now meet those needs just for their sake. Just for them. They're the target of your love, right? They're the ones who receive all the goodness. Because you understand yourself in this way, you're freed to love the people around you in a service and a sacrificial way for their sake. And this is what we do. And so can you put the second part of Ephesians 2 up on the screen? We'll read this again. For we are His workmanship,
created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand that we should walk in them.
Okay. It's kind of a weak reading, but I'll let you off on it. What God is saying is, because of Christ, because of what Jesus has dropped in your lap, grace from the cross, right, from His heart to yours, you are now His workmanship, right? You have purpose and a task, right? God has shaped you for where you are. You were called to this time, this place, this city, this family, for the sake of doing good works for the people around you. Right? And this is clearly not how we get salvation. But God has created you to do good works for the people around you. And so I want to give you two really good examples of where I've seen this play out in real life. Okay? So the first was this. We lived in Sioux Falls, South Dakota for a while, and there was a mechanic there. And their name was the High-Rigs, and they had a shop, you know, and lots of people took their cars there, and they always were busy, always were doing a good job. They had a very good reputation in the city, and they had a motto. They would have commercials on TV every once in a while, and their motto was this: "The coffee's always on." Okay, so it's a mechanic shop who says about their motto, "The coffee's always on." Okay, and one time I went and talked to them about this. Why is that your motto? You think it would be something like, you know, "We turn wrenches better than Jim," or something like that, right? But the motto was their coffee's always on because they believed that through what they were doing, they were simply getting to the real needs of people. Because when your car is broken down, is that a good week? It's not, right? It's a horrible week. Everything's up in the air, right? You got to get taxis or friends or whatever. You got to carpool, right? It throws you off, and they understood this, right? And so when people would come into their building saying, "We need a car to be fixed," they realized that there was likely an issue underneath that too, right? And so they would use this coffee pot to just hang out with the people and listen to them. While their car's being fixed, they're waiting for their tires, whatever, they would just listen to them. What's going on? Right? What is your need? Right? What can be done for you? Right? And you could tell this was they cared for people, right? They weren't just doing it to make a buck. They actually cared for the people that they were serving. And so I had a lemon of a car, right? Well, it was a fun car. It was an RX-7 Turbo that never worked, right? And I went in there a few times, and they did a whole bunch of work on it, and they would just stop and listen to what I was going through, you know, and they even actually at the end of it, they said, you know, this bill is huge because of how bad your car is, but we know you're a kid that doesn't have a good job, you know, and we like you because, you know, you're part of our church, and we're actually gonna lessen that bill for you, okay? And I'll always remember their kindness, right? And so what they were doing was they were using their work, which happened to be fixing cars. They're using their work to care for the real needs of people. Okay? They're using their work to care for the real needs of the people that they're placed around. So, real quick, think about in your life who you are around on a daily basis. Maybe it's at work, right? Maybe it's your coworker or someone you actually talk to, who you're serving, who's paying you. Know this, right? The reason that you've been placed in front of their path, right, is to love them, not to make a buck off them, right? It's to actually care for their whole person, for who they are. That God has put you in that place to love that person and to care for them. So whatever gifts you have, use it to serve them, right? If you're a comedian, right? Make people smile. Make people laugh. We need people laughing in this world. Amen? They actually have a need that they're bringing to you, right? And so you can use your skill set to influence them and to love them for their sake. For their sake. Okay. This is the second one, and this is a bit of a confession on my part when I didn't understand this at all, and I got it totally wrong. So I've had like 1,800 jobs in my life, right? So another job that I had was I worked in a school system where we worked with kids who had behavioral disorders, right? So for whatever reason, they had done something violent to get them into my class, right? And so there was this teacher who was actually, she ended up being kind of like the person that the kids were sent to on their first stop to the principal's office, okay? So when a kid gets a little out of control, they would be sent to her. She would try to talk them down and reverse their course. Okay, and she was great at her job. Okay, but one day she brought in this cat into her work. Okay, she brought in this cat, and this cat had a few strikes against it. Okay, first of all, it was naked. Right, it was a naked cat. Have anyone seen a naked cat? Right, there's a special breed. You know, I think it's Egyptian or something, but they don't have fur. Right, so they just look like this. They look like just this wrinkly little elongated rat. You know, like they're just not really much to look at. Right, and this cat had a club foot. Okay. So not only was it, you know, kind of this awkward looking cat, but it also had one of these feet like this, and it would hobble around, you know, and it was kind of a runt too, and she had picked it up she had adopted it, you know, and she brought it into her work, and the first thing I said was stupid, right? When I saw it, I was like, ugh. Get that thing away from me, right? That was the first reaction, you know, it's just like, oh, what a horrible little creature, you know, get that thing away from me. But then I realized that she had done this on purpose, and she was way, way ahead of the game compared to me on this one, because I saw this kid David, right? And David, he was one of my favorite little students there. Like, he was one of the kids who actually really had like a brain disorder, right? Who actually couldn't control himself, not just because of his situation at home, but there was some of that too. But he was just bipolar, right? It's kind of a severely bipolar child, and he would have emotional mood swings all the time, right? And one time I had driven by David's house, and I just looked and I saw where he lived. And I saw that he was just in his front yard, and there was no adults, and he was just sitting, right? And he looked like an animal that was chained. You know, that's what it struck me as. And so my heart was kind of broken for this little kid, and I saw him go to this room, and he loved this cat. Right? He loved this cat, and he would hold the cat, right, and pet the cat, and I realized that cat was a lot like David, right? It was something that reminded him of himself, of something that was kind of outcast because of a deformity, right, or because of a painful problem, or because of something, right? And so he loved this cat, and he had this great relationship with this. He would go to the room just to hang out with the cat, right? And she knew this. And I remember this. She said to me, you know, Mr. Barone, and you're going to be a pastor. Because I was clueless, right? But she understood that the way to love these kids, right, one way was to show them something similar to them, and to show them something that they could bond with and have compassion for, and in doing so, have compassion for themselves, right? And so this is my challenge to you this week, right? You're going to go back to your work or back to your home, and you're going to be confronted with some need, right? Guaranteed. Doesn't matter who you are or where you're going, right? You're going to be confronted with someone that God has put in front of you that has a legitimate need. And this is what you can do. You can use your intellect, you can use your strength, you can use your power, you can use your time, you can just listen to them, but you can find a way to meet one of their needs. You can do this because you are God's workmanship, and you are created to do good works, and He has prepared in advance that you should, in your life, walk in these good works, knowing first that God is the one who has loved you, who has completed you, who has given you an inheritance with His Son. God is the one who has done this for you, and so you are free to do this for others. Right? This is the heart of what we talk about when we say, when you serve people around you, you are worshiping. You are worshiping God. When you meet the people's needs around you, you are worshiping God. And it is informed by your faith.